Funding for Avery Talks About Stuff was made possible in part by the YouTube AdSense program and by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.
It's that most wonderful time of year again, and I'm ready to break out all the traditions. Christmas movies, 1950s jazz music, traumatizing ghost stories, candy canes, hot chocolate, protesting the oppression of the working class, Christmas trees. It's quite possible that A Christmas Carol is one of the most famous stories of all time. It's soaked so deeply into pop culture in the 181 years since it was first published that people reference it instinctively and sometimes without even realizing it. But it's so much more than just another story to tell at the holidays. It's a direct critique of the exploitation of the working class by the wealthy, and it handled the then-current politics of England's labor movement and fight for workers' rights directly. Charles Dickens had his fair share of flaws, to put it mildly, but one thing about that man is that he grew up extremely poor, and boy did he hate the way rich people got to fuck over poor people in his day. I'm so glad my day is so much better about that. To put it into context, how outspoken he was about the rights of the working class, Karl Marx publicly went on record to say that he was a big fan of Dickens and commended him for writing on social issues. Merry Christmas, comrade. On top of that, England, when the book was written, was in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, the second one to be exact, and as more and more people moved to the city, business owners saw this as an opportunity to gain a surplus of cheap labor. And as these shady practices fell under national scrutiny, factory owners propagated several self-serving counter-narratives such as being poor is due to moral deficiency that will only be encouraged by charitable acts, and people dying due to poverty or dangerous jobs in factories is good actually, because it saves us from an overpopulation problem. These sentiments would be directly echoed by Ebenezer Scrooge, making him a literary clapback post for the ages. Because in the autumn of 1843, Charles Dickens read such a scathing report of the working conditions of child laborers, we still have those today in case you were wondering, and he got so pissed off that he vowed to write something calling out the powers that be, and then he spent 6 weeks walking his ass around London in the middle of the night until he had handwritten A Christmas Carol. And then publishers said they wouldn't publish it because they didn't want to take a risk on it monetarily, and blah blah blah. They were also capitalist assholes. Charles Dickens funded his own book because fuck them, and it was a huge success. The book literally repopularized Christmas itself to the public, and it's not just simply here to suck all the fun out of the holiday season. He wrote it as a ghost story because the tradition back then was to tell ghost stories on Christmas, which is a tradition I love and personally want to bring back. And it's all in all just a clever dark comedy making fun of upper class greed. What's not to love? I've covered several versions of A Christmas Carol on this channel with individual deep dives, but the other day I started wondering how many versions of the movie had been made all in all, and when I looked it up and saw over 100 entries on IMDb, I suddenly had a new mission. Can I watch every version out there and catalog all of them in one place? I don't know, but I sure as hell am gonna try. It had been a while since I read the book all the way through, so before I started my journey through film adaptations, I listened to the audiobook version performed by Tim Curry, since that's my favorite reading of it. I sometimes forget, since it's obviously left out of all the movie adaptations, that the descriptions written are so delightfully vivid. It's so interesting to me that the book genuinely scares me. Like, movie versions of A Christmas Carol rarely frighten me, but the way that the ghosts are described so methodically just gets under my skin, to the point where I get super jumpy afterwards. However, real quick, I will point out that I had forgotten how goofy Charles Dickens is when he's writing women. Like, whatever, it was 1843, it's not like women had been invented yet, but Bob Cratchit tells his wife that making Christmas pudding is the coolest thing he's seen her do since they got married, and I'm sorry, but that's hilarious. Especially because the coolest thing that she's actually ever done is say that she hopes Scrooge dies in front of him. Super quick, there's a scene that usually gets omitted on screen where Scrooge gets to see his fiancée happily married with a bunch of kids because she dumped his ass, and she has a pretty eldest daughter, and the narrator, who also hits on Fred's wife, interrupts to say that he's jealous of her brothers who are roughhousing with her, and implies that he would have been into her, I assume as a young boy, I hope, and English teachers calm down, I know he's talking about the innocence of childhood, and it's a metaphor, and Victorians were just weird, so it's not worth seriously thinking about, but they're her brothers. Freud would have a field day, that's all I'm saying. All in all, I recommend reading the book if you haven't. It's good. It's culture. I started my trek through the films with the earliest ones I could, meaning silent shorts. Not all of them could be tracked down, with several being completely lost media as of making this video. I also kept getting mixed information about which was which, since they're all so obscure and old that some don't even credit their cast. With all that being said, I'll try my best to keep all these details straight for you. Marley's Ghost from 1901 is the first known adaptation of A Christmas Carol to film. No complete copies currently exist, so the version I watched was only 6 minutes long and was missing the final scene, so it just ends with Scrooge falling out over his own grave, which is kind of hilarious. A Christmas Carol from 1910, made by Edison Studios, fuck Thomas Edison, is technically better than the 1901 version, but that's not a super high bar, though their special effects are cool for the time. Scrooge from 1913 is the longest film so far at just under 40 minutes long and dedicates the first few to a brief history of Dickens himself. It also correctly identifies that past versions struggled with having no dialogue in a dialogue-heavy story, so it has a million bulky title cards to the point that it just feels like a nightmare-fueling interactive book and not a movie. Also, Marley is the only ghost, which is new for me and feels a little odd, but there are worse choices you could make. Why are they making Marley do all of this shit? He's got nobody else to help him? None of the other ghosts showed up to work that day? A Christmas Carol 1914 is a more or less standard retelling, but it does have this bit where Bob Cratchit tries to hit Scrooge with a stick when he gives him more money, and the look on his face is pretty funny. Scrooge 1922 is also pretty standard, but it mercifully is only about 10 minutes long because these silent movies are all starting to run together. I watched all the films from this first silent era in one sitting, and it was a big mistake. A Christmas Carol from 1923 is pure chaos, and I kind of love it. I'm counting it into the silent film section because it was obviously originally made as a silent picture, but they retroactively had actors do voiceovers, and also there's a narration by Lionel Barrymore, who's Drew Barrymore's great uncle of all people. But they left the title cards in, so you're trying to read the dialogue while other dialogue is being yelled at you over it. Also, this hilarious soundbite gets used a million times, and it's unintentionally comedy gold.
Good afternoon. Don't be angry, Uncle. Good afternoon. Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. Good afternoon. Oh, I'm sorry with all my heart to find you so determined. Good afternoon.
They also, in the middle of this shit show, choose to randomly keep in the scene from the book where a random couple is trying to hook up at Fred's Christmas party, and they end up engaged by the end. This movie has less than good reviews on Letterboxd, and I would love to try to explain to these 1920s filmmakers while they struggle with the new technology of their day that 100 years in the future, different technology will be invented so that strangers can bully them about it. At this point, just 6 movies in, my brain felt like mush, and I was really hoping that moving out of silent films would help because I had a long way to go. Also, like I said, there were several other films that seem to have been made but were lost to time, and as of right now, nobody seems to have found any of the prints or copies yet. So without even entering into the talkie era of film, there's already been quite a few versions of this story made for screen, and I have to wonder if any part of that had to do with the social climate of the Edwardian period into the 1920s. World War I saw a cosmic shift in the way the world runs. The wealth inequalities of the time were devastating, as the aristocratic class clawed desperately to the last little bits of their power. And I have to wonder if this story of a grumpy, too rich for his own good bastard resonated with audiences in any specific kind of way. Gee, I have no idea what it's like to live in a time period where billionaires having too much power is relevant. The golden age of Hollywood saw several glamorous versions of A Christmas Carol being made. This is probably a good time to mention that I am going to split the TV adaptations from the theatrical release adaptations. I'm making this decision right now because I checked the Wikipedia page that I'm essentially using as my main source of keeping all of this straight, and realized that there's just simply too many if I want to structure this video in any way that's going to be any kind of organized to put all of them together simply by date of release. So we're gonna start right now with theatrical releases from the Golden Age of Hollywood, and then after we progress through all the theatrical release films, we'll get to TV, and probably TV will have more than one section for itself too, because I think I said at some point earlier that like there's 100 different versions. It's more like 200 plus versions of A Christmas Carol. So yeah, let's just keep moving because we don't have time to do anything else. Scrooge, 1935. Are we noticing that all the titles just alternate between Scrooge and A Christmas Carol? We can't think of anything else to call these? Alright. The 1935 version stars Seymour Hicks, who previously played Scrooge in the 1913 version, so we have our first repeat performance. And the film itself on a technical level has its quirks, but I really loved it. I don't care that a bucket falls mid-scene and they don't bother to do another take. I like the choice to keep most of the spirits invisible. I know it's because they wanted to cut the Pepper's ghost effects, so they didn't have to do it, but it makes this one unique, and Marley opens a window with his transparent ghost hands, and I think that's hilarious. A Christmas Carol 1938 is Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's version, and you can totally feel it. It has that glitzy old Hollywood polish, and they're not afraid to take minor liberties, okay, sometimes slightly more than minor liberties, but whatever, to help the story flow in the structure of other big-budget movies of the time. I thought it was a nice version that gave me, like, Bishop's Wife type vibes. You know, it's kind of that era of film. And also we get a really fun himbo husband Fred, and he's my favorite one so far. Leyenda de Navidad, I'm sorry I probably butchered that pronunciation, from 1947 is a Spanish retelling of A Christmas Carol, and I swear to God, my white bread ass barely understood more than like every 10th word, maybe, if we're rounding up, but like, I liked this version a lot. The story is so universal, especially since this was my 9th version in a row. You don't really need to speak Spanish to enjoy it. Marley comes to life from a painting, which they do practically by sticking the actor in a little box. Fred's hot again. There's no downside. They also changed Scrooge's first name to William. I'm not sure why, but I'm pointing it out. He's also slightly warmer and more approachable, at least by Scrooge standards, than the previous ones before him, and he gets a second chance with his fiancée, which I've never seen before. Scrooge from 1951, which was renamed to A Christmas Carol when it released in America, so it got both of the overused titles, stars Alistair Simms as Scrooge, and it's hailed as one of the best versions ever made to this day, and it really is fantastic. Like, if you've done any research on Christmas Carol retellings at all, you've probably heard that this one is, like, superior. And it really holds up to the hype. It's beautifully shot, it's faithful to the source material while still adding more character depth, so we get a more well-rounded Scrooge. It's just classic. We close out this shiny section on a high note with 10 total films watched. I feel so cultured having seen all these historic, sparkly movies.
Watch out. He's a thoughtful boss. Thanks, boys. Get the nurse.
This next section is dedicated to every theatrical release of A Christmas Carol that was released between 1970 and 2000, aka the aesthetic years, according to TikTok. Scrooge, 1970, marks our first musical adaptation on our journey together, and it's fine. It doesn't need to be 2 full hours long, and it also doesn't need to be a musical, but everyone in it is kind of accidentally iconic.
I hate people.
It also has the goofiest sequence of Scrooge realizing he's dead that I've ever seen. I watched this one with my dad as he was baking, and we had fun even though we gave it shit. Okay, so did you know that in 1975, in pure 1970s fashion, they made a adult-rated Christmas Carol? Because I sure didn't. And upon finding that out, no disrespect to people in the adult film industry, my first, second, and third thought was I absolutely don't want to see that. And also, like, I'm not gonna be able to add any clips, so what would even be the point? So the plan was just to skip over that one altogether. But I realized that I had to at least mention it because it's historically relevant for the fact that it is the first instance of a female Scrooge on camera. Then I realized with one very scary Google search that there's a channel on YouTube that edits the porn out of porn and posts just kind of the snippets around the porn by itself in like a PG format. So I pulled up that for the bit, which I do not recommend anybody underage doing because even with all of the porn edited out, I still think I saw Jacob Marley's dick. Let's take a moment to hold space for that sentence together. This is not the destination I anticipated when I started the journey, is all I'm gonna say.
Scrooge, 1988, attempts to modernize the classic story with a goofy Bill Murray vehicle. It's very late 80s. Some of it's fun, and some of it ages really badly, and overall it lacks a lot of the heart that A Christmas Carol usually has by being a bit too sarcastic. It also shows the characters watching the 1951 version at one point, and I started feeling like I was trapped in a liminal space of Christmas carols for a second. The Muppet Christmas Carol 1992 is the best Christmas Carol that has ever been made. I'm not even joking. The further I get into this project, the more that statement is reaffirmed to me. I have a whole video just about this one on the channel, so I won't get too into it here, but between Michael Caine playing it super classical, like he's in a prestige piece, and the Muppets getting to be fun and goofy, the movie strikes this perfect balance between grief and comedy that A Christmas Carol requires, honestly, to be done correctly. Also, the music, the puppetry, the camera work, every step of the way, they go the extra mile and it shows. Even Perry loves it. Also, I know I have a lot of Muppet videos and we'll do more individual ones in the future, but one of the bigger projects that I want to do is watching every Muppet movie and putting them together in a big index like this. This era seemed to be all about revitalizing and updating the story in different ways, whether it be making it a musical, making it modern, making it porn. The original story has already been done to death at this point, and everybody wants to make it new. With 14 films tracked, let's move into the final theatrical release section.
I am the ghost of Christmas past. I'm not the man I was.
This next section stretches from 12 years to the year of our Lord 2024 and technically starts with a non-theatric release, but that's where Wikipedia stuck it, I think, because they had nowhere else to put it. I also have no idea where to put it, so it's going here. A Christmas Carol 2012 was released January 1st, 2012 on multiple online platforms. Why it wasn't put out for Christmas, I don't know, but January 1st is still within the 12 days of Christmas, and I don't know when this video will go up, so I'm not going to talk too much shit. This movie is not very good, mostly for technical film nerd reasons, like lighting, shot composition, jumping the line so much, but it's an indie project with very little funding, so I'm not going to be too hard on them. Scrooge and Marley, also 2012, reimagines A Christmas Carol from the perspective of a queer narrative. It's set in modern day, and literally everyone in the movie is gay. Scrooge runs a gay bar instead of a counting house, and the tone is kind of a mix between serious Lifetime movie and lighthearted Hallmark rom-com. The movie itself isn't that good from a technical standpoint, but I like what they're going for. I'm always down for a gay retelling of A Christmas Carol. Also, respectfully, this is the hottest Scrooge I've ever seen. I'm saying so respectfully. A Christmas Carol 2015 is easily the worst one I've seen so far. I'm gonna say this once, if you're gonna do A Christmas Carol, either do it line for line like it was written, or deviate super hard. Do not try to rewrite the old-timey language.
If there's anything left, you may have it after I am dead.
We want nothing from you, Uncle, save for the pleasure of your company at Christmas dinner.
The pleasure of my company. Yes, now I know that you are trying to extort from me. Good afternoon, Fred.
How are you gonna make Dickens more dense? And the dialogue isn't even the worst thing because it's a musical and oh my god, it hurts me. Maybe I'm being too mean because this is Christmas Carol 17 and I think this story is actually starting to make me a worse person. But why is everything yellow? I think the porno might have been shot better than this. The internet is telling me that this played in theaters, but how? It's only an hour long and comically amateur. I'm sorry, I'm being too mean. I know I'm being too mean. I'm just gonna move on.
A Christmas Carol 2018 is a film adaptation of a one-man show that ran for several holiday seasons in London. Simon Callow performs his own abridged version of the story in an old abandoned warehouse, and it's actually pretty good. The sound design is binaural and paired with some really cool cinematography. It's a very refreshingly stripped down retelling that kind of brings old and new together. It's just a cool vibe. Not really for like if you want to have like a film, like a Christmas Carol film to put on, but like if you want like a really kind of fancy feeling way of having the story told to you, it's perfect. The Passion of Scrooge, also 2018, I was very afraid it was going to be another porno from that title, is a pretentious art house operatic film concert experience thing. The music is pretty, but the whole thing feels so self-serious that it's kind of goofy. Like, as an artist, I'm all for artists doing their passion projects, but this show centers on the composer so much, and it just feels like, look at the artist doing important art things. And as an artist, I just can't take that seriously. There's all these shots of the composer walking around outside, talking about how important the piece is and looking at homeless people. And it's like supposed to connect A Christmas Carol to modern day social issues. And I think that's an interesting point. But one, A Christmas Carol already applies to modern issues if you have media literacy. And two, just show me archival footage of what's going on in the world with the music over it. The composer doesn't need to be in these shots, he's only there to center him as the genius of theater. My issue with this is summed up perfectly, I think, in this one shot of the composer watching buskers in the subway. They're in the background, with the camera focused on him. As artists, we should just try to tell stories. We aren't the most important thing. All we can strive for is to maybe get to entertain the people doing the more important things in the world, and center them. This isn't for the art, it's for the artist. Okay, tangent over, I hated this. Spirited 2022 is a buddy comedy musical take on the story starring Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. I thought I was gonna dislike this one, but I honestly kind of loved it. It's fun and silly and has an elf reference and actually digs deeper into the story than I've currently seen 20 times now. I've seen this story 20 times at this point. And yes, it's kind of sentimental in places, but that's what Christmas is all about. That's what Christmas movies should be, and A Christmas Carol should be Christmassy. It's a Christmas story. They also call it the sheer amount of remakes. And they reference Scrooged specifically, and I felt like I was in a liminal space of Christmas carols for a moment. It's no art house opera piece, but I had fun watching it. Spoiler alert, by the way. Ryan Reynolds is probably worse than all the other Scrooges because before he changes, he realizes that if he doesn't change, he's gonna accidentally cyberbully a child into unaliving themselves. Oh, and then he changes and saves Will Ferrell from unaliving himself. Honestly, if I had a nickel for every time Will Ferrell almost offed himself in a Christmas movie, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. We now arrive at our first wave of animation. These aren't all theatrical release films, just animation not exclusively made for TV. We'll tackle animation later. I actually don't think any of the films in this particular section got a theatrical release. It's just stuff you saw on a VHS randomly in the 80s and 90s. Starting with Mickey's Christmas Carol, 1983. I love this special, watch it every year. I know a lot of other people do, I grew up with it. If Disney made more stuff like this instead of making another Star Wars prequel, I'd be more at peace. It's warm, it's full of all the characters you love, like Goofy and the Weasels from Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. It's classic. I have a whole video about this one too, if you want to check it out. A Christmas Carol 1991 is quite frankly the new worst. Imagine a failed 90s airplane food comic rewrote A Christmas Carol with the goal of making it the dumbest thing, and then found the shittiest animators and voice actors in the world. That's this.
Are you kidding me or something? Cratchit, you're as bad as that goofy nun. Payday's not till Friday.
If AI tech bro dicks want an argument for why robots should replace artists, I'd personally start here if I were them. A Christmas Carol 1994 started with the Good Times Entertainment intro. They made that terrible Beauty and the Beast I covered a while ago, and I knew I was gonna hate myself for this one. Like everything Good Times made before well-deserved bankruptcy, it was garbage. But the previous one I had just seen was so bad that at this point nothing could hurt me. A Christmas Carol 1997 is yet another one that has its own video in the back catalog. I've covered a lot of stuff from this section. It's not a great movie, and the animation looks really cheap.
But it has great talent like Jodie Benson and Tim Curry, and since Tim Curry narrated the book that I listened to, and also I know that he played Scrooge on Broadway, let's add him to the Scrooge Reprise Roll Club. And honestly, the last song that Scrooge has, I hummed to myself way more than you would believe. I don't know, I have a strange fondness for this one. And All Dogs Christmas 1998 is a direct-to-video Christmas Carol spin-off of All Dogs Go to Heaven, a movie that traumatized me as a child. The special is cute, and it kind of has its own story going on with the Christmas Carol thing just kind of in the background, so I liked it. This section is full of mostly cheap animation, mostly to capitalize on the popularity of VHS at the time, but there were some nostalgic bits in the middle of the trash. This next section is just like the previous section, except it's continuing into the new millennium, post-Y2K animation, if you will. A Christmas Carol, the movie, 2001, first of all, calling itself The Movie is hilarious to me, because at this point I've seen 26 of these. But anyway, it's got a great cast, including Simon Cowell, so another repeat Scrooge, along with Kate Winslet and Nicolas Cage as Marley.
Oh, I sought the most. You shall be haunted by 3 spirits.
You know, I didn't know that I needed that in my life, but I kinda love it. The movie takes liberties while still being careful to hit all the usual beats. I like the animation choices made in Christmas Futures segment, and the way it mixes live action with animation, but it's not my favorite version. A Christmas Carol, Scrooge's Ghostly Tale from 2006 has the shittiest low-budget CGI animation that you could possibly imagine. God, I hate companies that make low-budget junk to make a couple bucks off of kids. Can the ghosts all bully those guys this year, after they're done with Jeff Bezos, of course? Bah Humduck, A Looney Tunes Christmas, was one of mine and my brother's favorites growing up. I remember when they started playing it on Cartoon Network every single year, and it became a tradition, and we would record it on the DVR and play it so much that I would get to know not only every word of the movie, but I would have memorized all of the commercials that would play in the version that was recorded off of TV. I actually watched this with my brother, and we still love it. It's so funny, it's so cute, it's just a really fun version. Barbie in A Christmas Carol from 2008 features Barbie as the Scrooge character, which is super girl boss of her. I've only ever seen one other Barbie movie, and it was the Nutcracker one that I made a video about a while back, and I know people have done it before, but I want to do a video watching all of those in a row because there's like almost 50 of them, I think, and they're hilarious. A Christmas Carol 2009 is the mocap one with Jim Carrey as Scrooge, and it's super dated animation, and it lives right in that space of like uncanny valley nightmare fuel. But I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I like Jim Carrey as Scrooge. And not only is he Scrooge, but he's the ghost of past, present, and future, which has to be a first, as far as at least I've seen so far for Christmas Carols, that the same actor would play Scrooge and all 3 of the ghosts. In fact, most of the characters in the movie are credited to just a small handful of actors that all do very well, very big name cast. This version is, as I stated before, terrifying though. Gave me nightmares as a kid, it gives me nightmares now. When my best friend and I wrote our Christmas Carol, we rewatched it and trauma bonded together for research. Scrooge, A Christmas Carol 2022 is an animated remake of specifically the 1970 musical version that we've already seen. And for a moment, I felt like I was in a liminal space of Christmas carols. The movie is actually pretty cute, and it has a good cast, including Luke Evans voicing Scrooge. Okay, 31 versions down. Let's move into the world of TV. Unfortunately, the majority of versions from this era are lost because the technology to record off your TV didn't exist yet, and TV stations didn't know to preserve these mostly live broadcasts for future showings. Remember, kids, preserve media so that future generations can see it and talk about it on the internet. Anyway, there are still some interesting versions to be seen here, so here we go. The Christmas Carol, 1949, is nothing special overall, but considering it was such an early live broadcast, it's part of history. It also is narrated by Vincent Price, so I'm automatically a fan for that reason alone. A Christmas Carol, 1954, quite a variety with the names still going on, was performed on the show Shower of Stars, which from what I can tell was a show in the 50s that featured big actors of the time, each week in a different televised drama. This version is so very 50s, right down to the Chrysler sponsorship baked into the broadcast, but hey, Basil Rathbone plays Marley in this one. The Stingiest Man in Town, 1956,
1976 is a live musical version starring Basil Rathbone as Scrooge this time. Hey, he got promoted. This version is very 50s and clearly reverse engineered around having variety show style spots for the singers, dancers, comedians, and prestigious actors that had signed on, but paired with the two before, it felt very cozy, so I got my current crochet project and a hot chocolate, and I made a night out of it. Tales from Dickens, A Christmas Carol, 1959, is an episode of an anthology series also starring Basil Rathbone. Good lord. This section should really be called Basil Rathbone and occasionally other people are in A Christmas Carol. Put him on the reprise list. He's played Scrooge twice now. This version is fine. It's just very rushed due to only having a half-hour TV block to work with. Carol for Another Christmas, 1964, was written by Rod Serling and is painfully relevant for how of its time it is. It takes A Christmas Carol story, places it in the 60s, and uses it to tackle a variety of social issues from war and American nationalism to global poverty and racism. Like the rest of Rod Serling's work, it turns it on every viewer watching, because even at Christmas, that man wanted you to ask yourself, am I really a good person? And I love that for him. Even though I had to miss out on a lot of these forgotten versions, the ones I got to see were very cozy, except for Rod Serling's. That one scared the hell out of me.
From Turner Network Television and Hallmark Entertainment, A Christmas Carol.
Continuing on through the history of A Christmas Carol and television, let's talk about how all of that adapted with the invention of color TV. Carry On Christmas, 1969, is a sketch comedy take on A Christmas Carol. I had no idea this franchise existed, and apparently it's the longest running film franchise in Great Britain. This special has a lot of dated jokes and is so painfully British. Shout out to my lovely British viewers. I love you guys. It wasn't my thing, but please don't come for me. I don't have any tea to throw in the harbor. A Christmas Carol, 1977, from the BBC, has such bad sets that they just turn off the lights half the time, and God bless them. It's pretty standard in every other way, but oh my god, does it look terrible. Rich Little's Christmas Carol, 1978, is an HBO special featuring the impressionist Rich Little playing the characters, all of them, but as celebrities, so he's doing impressions of people, and then it's like those people that he's doing the impressions of are playing the you get it. It's a lot of super dated pop culture references, and I think I would have liked it better if I was actually alive in the 1970s. Guess I had to be there. An American Christmas Carol, 1979, is a version of A Christmas Carol set during the Great Depression in, well, America, and stars a mid-30s Henry Winkler, of all people, as the Scrooge guy. His name is not Scrooge, but you know. It's silly, but it's not the worst I've seen, though someone correct me if I'm wrong, but they kind of combine his sister character and the fiance character into one person, and it almost gave me a heart attack. A Christmas Carol, 1984, starring George C. Scott as Scrooge, is one of the most popular versions, and it is very good. But while I was watching it, it was at this point in the process that Spencer looked at me watching my 41st Christmas Carol and asked a very important question. Why are there so many damn Christmas carols? And to that, I would say, your guess is as good as fucking mine. My brain is melting. Please send help. Ebenezer Scrooge, 1988, came in with the assist to my declining mental health with some of the more terrifying puppets I've ever seen. This was made for Canadian television. It's absolutely ridiculous, and he's not credited, but tell me that that isn't Jim Henson singing.
And I have seen it shining from afar.
Bah Humbug, The Story of Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol, 1990. Really long title, guys. Why? That's a long title. Is a live reading instead of an actual film, but James Earl Jones reads for Scrooge, so that was good, even though it's intensely boring in comparison to the chaos of all the other ones I've seen. A Christmas Carol, 1999, stars Patrick Stewart as Scrooge, as well as Richard E. Grant as Bob Cratchit, who will always have a special place in my heart as classic Loki. And as I watched this version, I thought a lot about how, at this point, so many Christmas carols have been made, and any innovation on it has seemingly been done and done again, to the point where the only thing left to look forward to is just getting to see actors you really like in the roles that you know, which isn't a bad thing, but it really speaks to how overplayed it's all gotten. In the end, this whole section was just kind of painfully average with a lot of hits and misses, but it's at this point that I would like to point out that Christmas has come and gone. It is now January, and oh my god, I just want to wrap up this project so bad. I'm so over A Christmas Carol right now.
NBC Christmas Eve. Kelsey Grammer and Jason Alexander lead an all-star cast. A Christmas Carol, 8/7 Central, NBC Christmas Eve.
I'm too loopy to even know what section we're technically on. Let's just get into it. A Diva's Christmas Carol 2000 is a super corny VH1 remake starring Vanessa Williams as a diva pop star Scrooge. Hey, another girl Scrooge that isn't in a porn. It's pretty fun and goofy, and I have a feeling a lot of people my age are nostalgic for it. A Christmas Carol, the musical, 2004. How many musicals have we seen so far? Is the one where Kelsey Grammer is Scrooge and a whole bunch of other famous people are in it. It's based on the Alan Menken Broadway show that I'm told is a lot better than this version, but you know, every year it would air on TV when I was a kid, so I grew up with it, and coincidentally it's my mom's favorite version, somehow, even though she hates musicals. The woman hates musicals. This is her favorite version. You might have seen people talk about it here on YouTube this past Christmas, as it's been going mini viral recently as kind of like the movie of the week to hate. Because yeah, it's weird. I could honestly do a whole video on this movie alone, but it's not the worst Christmas Carol ever like some people like to say it is. This is the 46th version in a row that I've seen, and it's child's play compared to some of the disturbingly bad ones I've suffered through. Also, Jason Alexander's Marley is so cutie, and I love him. Am I allowed to say that on YouTube? He's so sassy and fun, and his Link by Link song gets stuck in my head all the time, and it makes me laugh.
Link by horrifying Link!
A Christmas Carol Goes Wrong 2017 is a personal favorite of mine. If you've never seen the Goes Wrong show or anything to do with Mischief Theater, please go watch it. The premise is that there's this in-universe theater company of oddball characters that are really bad at theater, but they just keep doing shows, and they always go wrong, and it's this really funny comedy. It's like if The Office was about a theater company instead of people working at a paper company. A Christmas Carol 2019 is a gritty horror drama miniseries that revamps the story into something colder than normal. It's not the warm, fuzzy Christmas special you know, but something that aims to take itself seriously and be more grounded. I like a lot of what it does, though it certainly isn't perfect. The show makes itself far too dark for an outright happy ending, and it seems uninterested in having one, in the name of appearing modern and intellectual, and part of me rolls my eyes at the idea that forgiveness is for children and corny movies. I will say, though, that when Scrooge does gain redemption, though it doesn't feel as complete as it usually does, it does feel honest. He acknowledges that much of what he's done cannot be undone, and in that, he truly proves that he's changed. We can only earn forgiveness by realizing that we don't deserve it. All in all, it's interesting. It doesn't try to gloss over the horrible things that he's done, and by extension, the horrible things that greedy oligarchs do to hurt the poor all the time to this very day, and I appreciate that, and honestly, any variation of this story, I will take at this point. This mini section was fine, but now I'd like to go back to watching cartoons, please. Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol 1962 stars Mr. Magoo as Scrooge by way of an in-universe play. It's more faithful than you might think, other than having Christmas Present show up before Christmas Past, which I've never seen in any other version, and I don't know why they would do that. Christmas Carol 1969 is kind of ugly and routine. If I'm being honest, I don't really have any other comment on it. It's just kind of there. A Christmas Carol 1971 stars Alistair Simms again, so add him to the reprise role, and this version is actually one that won an Oscar back in the day. It's got an interesting style that would have scared me as a kid, but I see why people appreciate the artistry of it. The Stingiest Man in Town, 1978, is an animated remake of the 1956 version of the same name. You didn't think in a giant Christmas video Rankin and Bass wouldn't show up, did you? Since it's a remake, they use all the same songs from the original. They're kind of oops all bangers, honestly. And when I saw the original one, you know, one of the ones that had Basil Rathbone in it, I never thought I'd hear these songs ever again. It was kind of a nice surprise. Bugs Bunny's Christmas Carol 1979, part of the special Looney Tunes Christmas Tales, is another Looney Tunes version that predates the one I grew up with. I was really hoping they'd have Daffy Duck as Scrooge again because I wanted him to be on the reprise list next to Basil Rathbone, but alas, they gave the part to Yosemite Sam this time, who only has to be bullied once by Bugs Bunny in a sheet ghost costume before he caves like a little bitch. However, Porky Pig is still Bob Cratchit because I guess he just gives off that vibe. I like anything Looney Tunes, so I appreciate this one. A Christmas Carol 1982 is an Australian animated version that's actually pretty good. Marley has a banger monologue.
And if that spirit does not go forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death.
And it all around clearly wanted to take the subject matter seriously, but can I ask, what's up with Christmas Past? This is without a doubt the funniest design for Past I have ever seen. He looks like Hercules before he got his life together. A Flintstones Christmas Carol 1994 is another one that gets meta, with the play being put on by all the characters for the Bedrock Community Theater. But it also focuses on Fred Flintstone learning about what a piece of shit he is as a person. Alright, 55 Christmas carols in, and this video is very, very late, and I have to wrap it up. Partially for my own sanity. But just for good measure, here are a few last miscellaneous versions to close us out. A Sesame Street Christmas Carol from 2006 is a direct-to-VHS Christmas Carol version put out, obviously, by the Jim Henson Company.
For with the season comes the magical, snow-covered silence of a very special night.
Starring Oscar the Grouch being a grouch about Christmas, and the ghosts of past, present, and future come to teach him lessons in the form of repackaged segments of previous Christmas/holiday Sesame Street episodes. It's pretty cute, and it's fun seeing some old sketches from a while back. I don't like the 2006 CGI that they tried out. I would have much preferred if the ghosts were all just more puppets. And I think they could have done more with the story than just repackaged material, but you know I love Sesame Street. Also, I found out yesterday that Sesame Street got canceled by PBS. What the fuck, you guys? Fuck you. 2025 is not it currently. The Smurfs: A Christmas Carol 2011, another direct-to-DVD version of the story, is A Christmas Carol with the Smurfs. It's terrible. It's awful. I hate this one. I don't know why I viscerally hate it so much when I have clearly probably seen worse, but I hate this one. Ms. Scrooge 1997 is, I believe, a made-for-Hallmark version of A Christmas Carol, starring the always iconic Cecily Tyson as a Ms. Scrooge. I don't know why this wasn't listed in the Wikipedia section for the made-for-TV versions, because it's just a modern day, well, modern day being 1997 because that's when it was made, but a modern day version of the story with a Lady Scrooge. Also, Catherine Helmond, which I don't really see people talk about how funny she was, she played Marley. And yeah, got to see Lady Scrooge and Lady Marley. It was nice. Ebenezer, also from 1997, is a Canadian made-for-TV Western version of A Christmas Carol, which is awful. This movie was so fucking weird and just badly made, which is such a shame because a Western Christmas Carol is such a missed opportunity for not doing it well. I love a good Western. I don't know if you guys know that about me. I'm really down for like a good Western. Love a good cowboy flick. But this one was bad. Anyway, one final Christmas Carol, and this is number 60. This is the last one I'm going to talk about in this video, is one that I made. And no, this whole video was not one big ploy for self-promotion, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this movie because it's a big part of why A Christmas Carol is so important to me on a personal level. Marley's Angels 2021 is a comedy short film that I made with my brother Spencer and some of my best friends in the world. Andrew Fincham, Natasha Reeves, Gabe Kustick, along with so many other friends and family that are so dear to me and dear to my heart. Marley's Angels is a parody of sorts that I wrote with my buddy Andrew Fincham about the behind the scenes of it all when it comes to A Christmas Carol and like what the ghosts have to go through to get there and kind of showing them off as like goofy personalities that they are. And I just want to say, Spirited, we thought of this idea first. We wrote this and made this a whole year before Spirited came out. Just like I wrote Satan Claus way before the Jack Black movie came out, but not to brag. I watched this one back this year with Spencer, my brother, as well as Torres, one of our really good friends that we did not know when we made that film, but we were very lucky to know now. And it was just such a weird experience to get to watch old work of yours and
to, one, sure, be able to see where you definitely could have done better if you did it now, but also just being really proud of the person that you were at the time for making what you did, because at the time this was really ambitious for us, and obviously when I watch it I see, you know, imperfections and things that I could do better nowadays, but, you know, the filmmaker I was in 2021 had only made like 3 or 4 other films, and this was by far the largest production we had done. And also, it's so funny because, like, while I obviously as a filmmaker can see imperfections, watching my old work makes me realize that I really just think about the people and the places and the moments that made up making that film. My favorite part of watching it is actually watching the blooper reel that I made to roll the credits over at the end, because it's just such a fun keepsake, a memento of that weekend that we spent filming this thing that made no money. We didn't do it for any kind of monetary gain. We just did it because we wanted to do it. And that's really what film is all about to me, is just being able to make art that says something about what you're feeling, even if it's a silly, goofy comedy called Marley's Angels. Thank you so much to my co-collaborators for letting me get away with naming the movie that. But anyway, not to get too sentimental, but this movie is the reason why A Christmas Carol means so much to me, because my buddy Andrew and I sat for a very long time talking about rereading, rewatching a bunch of Christmas carols, many of which we've seen in this very video. And while Christmas Carol was already something that I obviously knew and grew up with since my mom loves it so much, this experience making this film is a very giant pillar in why the story as a whole means so much to me. And if anybody out there needs a reminder, this is your reminder to make that film or that art project or that thing that's important to you, and do it with the people that are important to you, because that is going to endure far longer than your like technical capabilities as an artist will. You know, you'll be able to look back and know that you could do better and that you've grown as an artist, but you'll always be able to have that moment in time captured with art. So anyway, in summary, why is A Christmas Carol still so important to us that after all of these versions, like I watched 60 versions of this story, and there's so many more that I wasn't able to because of time constraints, because it's literally getting to the second half of January and I'm not done with this video yet. There's so many versions that I can't find because they're lost to time because they weren't preserved. There's a whole version that just straight up stars Ronald Reagan that was directed by Jimmy Stewart that I couldn't find, because apparently the only places you get to see it are at the Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Stewart Memorial Museums now, which is such a shame because I wanted to make fun of Ronald Reagan so bad. So why is it that after all of these adaptations over and over and over again, theater companies who put it on year after year after year, why is it still such a staple of Christmas when there are so many other things that have been forgotten by time or just didn't really hold up to the level of tradition that apparently Christmas Carol instills in us? I think there's a depressing answer to this question and then also a really hopeful answer to this question. The depressing answer, which I'll get out of the way first, is simply that wealth disparity and a need to take out our frustrations on the rich, and also holding the rich accountable, has always been and will probably continue to be a fact of life. Like, sure, wealth disparity in the time of Charles Dickens looked like the Industrial Revolution forcing people into dangerous factories, even when those people were children. It meant workhouses and sickness and no minimum wage, and those were the things that were being directly referenced in the story. But to this day, wealth disparity has just taken on a different face. It's still there, it just now it looks like Amazon workers being forced to unimaginably difficult working conditions and way too many working hours just to support the practical monopoly that is Amazon and the instant gratification consumerism in this era of late stage capitalism. That was a lot of big words at once, but you know what I mean. I stand by what I said. It looks like billionaires using their bought and paid for 24-hour news cycles to justify a genocide in Palestine. It looks like literal fucking corrupt billionaires actually running the government and starting something
called the Doge Department? Fuck you, Elon Musk. And your little Donnie too. The themes of the story are sadly still relevant in the way that there are still rich people devaluing the lives of everyday humans because they can't make any money off of them. But the hopeful version of the answer to why Christmas Carol is still so important is just that as much as it is a story calling out terrible people, it's also a story of forgiveness and redemption. It's a story reminding all of us that at any point we can change our ways and decide to be kinder, be more charitable. It's overall a story about the goodness in life and humanity. And in this way, it brings not just pessimism for what we have to endure, but hope for the future, that things will get better because humans have an immense capability for love, even though sometimes the world seems like it just sucks. And no, I'm not just saying this because it's January 19th and I'm sitting here trying to finish up this video. I'm saying it because I genuinely do think that this story is something that is important, not just at Christmas, but its principles are important all year around. And so in conclusion, I hope you have liked this video. I hope you had good holidays a month ago, whatever holidays you celebrated. And if not, I hope you just had a pretty chill time. And this is your daily reminder to just do something for somebody else today. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I want you to know that even though I've been away and I've been struggling to figure out how to continue this channel while I've been dealing with some personal things and just going through an incredibly hectic time of my life, I want you to know that I'm all good. I'm doing well. I hope you are doing well. I'd like to thank you for being here, and I'm here to promise you that these longer form videos are something that I want to continue doing, so I'm definitely going to be doing them. But anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing. Everything you do to support this channel means the world to me. If you're new here and you're a fan of nonsense, maybe consider sticking around. I post nonsense all the time. And remember, my name is Avery. I'm a YouTuber if you say so, because thanks to you guys, this is technically a YouTube channel. Bye, guys.
Let me help you, Mr. Scrooge. Oh, no! He's completely incapacitated. Don't worry, I'll step in. I'm fine!